The Messenger is the first and debut game coming from the developers over there at Sabotage Studios and published through Devolver Digital. It was released on August the 30th, 2018, and with that, you already know what version I'm rocking with, so let's get into it. The Messenger looks like, well, of course, if you haven't heard it from other reviews or from other places, or just by looking at this game, it's reminiscent of the old NES Ninja Gaiden games with its simple 8-bit textures and color shading. However, when you get to a certain point in the game, the surroundings and environments change via these rifts that takes the Messenger back and forth through time. At first, I didn't want to reveal this tidbit of information because it's kinda spoilerish, but considering this game relies on the player seeing the trailer, I guess it's all good. Now, once the player jumps through these rifts, the same level that the player is on transforms, with everything going from 8-bit to glorious 16-bit, which is a tad bit more detailed and lively in my opinion. In this time frame, the player gets to see what time has done and undone to characters and memorable areas. It's quite amazing, and for some of the things that I will see, it's kinda hilarious. This game pulls off something that I'm sure was definitely a challenge for the developers to do. It's like the two different time periods are actually two different games. The people responsible for this game's artistic direction seems to have had to do the whole entire game over again twice, and then stack the different designs of each time period up on top of each other. Seeing how seamlessly it is for this game to go for a simple 8-bit to a 16-bit literally within an instant. This somewhat duality is all across this game's visuals, this game's mechanics, and definitely within the Messenger's music that plays in the background. The story of the Messenger tells the tale of this ninja who lives on a secluded island with other ninjas that have spent years of training due to the fact that the human race is on the verge of being wiped out from existence. This island is actually the last remaining sliver of human civilization. But anyway, the elders of this island prophesy of a warrior who will come bearing this scroll to be delivered to a chosen warrior worthy enough. All of this is taking place during the time of turmoil caused by the demons who are just wrecking and dominating the world. However, the chosen warrior must take this ancient scroll to the top of the highest mountain and do something with it. This is as far as the prophecy goes, and is only like 1/3 of this game's objective. The other 2/3 of the game is what happens after this first one is done. Without spoiling too much, it involves time travel. The music of the Messenger was done by one Rainbow Dragon Eyes.
Hey everyone, Rainbow Dragon Eyes here. I'm the one who's responsible for making the soundtrack to The Messenger.
That's an awesome name, by the way, and features a whole lot of heavy synths in which, according to his website, refers to as chiptune. Music that which is created by manipulating or emulating the sound of chips of retro computers and video game consoles. Just as I said within the presentation as far as changing from 8-bit to 16-bit, the music does the same thing as well. Rainbow Dragon Eyes even broke this game's OST down into multiple parts based on the era in which the player is traversing the world through. The first part is called The Messenger Disc 1, which is the past, and Disc 2, which is the future. But then on the other hand, on Disc 2, which is dealing with the future, the music on here sounds a little bit more complex and is more layered when it comes to the polyrhythmic compositions. This leads to the music sounding a little bit more natural, and in some cases louder than the 8-bit counterparts, obviously. The overall music for the Messenger does its job and add the right elements to this game's various environments, gives a sense of urgency to the player to be on their toes, especially during boss battles, and makes things a tad bit more hilarious when reading the many banters between characters. To me personally, not only does it remind me of the nostalgia feels of old games that would be considered retro nowadays, but also tastes and pushes it forward to how it would sound like now. This to me definitively solidifies the concept of both OSTs, one being the past and one being the future. Oh, and I can't forget that he also did the OST for the DLC. More on that later. I will have a link to his official website so you can check out his many projects. Link will be provided in the description below as always. Lastly, it's kinda noteworthy to mention that Sabotage Studios tapped their shoulders again to do work on a game called Sea of Stars. More on that later. The sound design within the Messenger sounds exactly like what you would think from a game that possesses the type of visual aesthetics as it does. You're gonna hear a whole lot of electronic sounds, of course, coming from the slashes and also from your opponents to emulate the sound of a blade cutting through the air, or whatever your opponent stands in the way. When going up against massive sized bosses, hearing the moves makes them sound a little bit more colossal than probably what they already are. Speaking of bosses and sound design, the bosses within the Messenger sometimes telegraph their next move by what you will hear. This will help the player out in finding out how to maneuver through certain obstacles in which some of the bosses will be thrown at you. And even how noticeable the music that players go through this filter that drowns it out a bit whenever the player goes underwater is very good. It's a welcome way to make sure that the player is becoming a little bit more engulfed within the world that you're traveling through. Again, this game sounds just like a retro NES game, but that isn't a bad thing, not at all. said in the presentation, the messenger looks but also plays like the modernized version of those classic ninja gaiden games. The player has the ability to move in various directions, but primarily left or right because of the 2D confinement. The messenger can also clean the walls and do other things as far as mobility goes, which I will dive a little bit deeper into in regards to the items that you'll either have or have to acquire to add more depth. As far as of offensive measures for defending yourself, the messenger has what typically ninjas have, which is a sword and throwing stars. That for the most part is only the surface level of the abilities that you have. As far as gameplay goes, now it's time to talk about what makes this game open up a little bit. But before I do that, first I have to finish up on the abilities and what you have at your disposal. Along with the other things the messenger can do, this game also has the double jump feature, which is called the cloud jump. But in order to pull this off, you have to attack something within the air that will allow this cloud to appear up under the messenger's feet to allow him to jump again. The items that will help your character move around more efficiently is the grappling hook that will catapult this ninja quickly into the desired location, wherever direction is thrown out. Realistically speaking, it looks like this ninja's neck might snap due to whiplash. Later on in the game, you get this wingsuit added to your gear that has your character gliding from high altitudes, and also would allow the ninja to be lifted up in the air via these air geysers. You would think that this is all there is, but no. The game takes what you already have, and through a little creative thinking, gives the player beneficial maneuvers. For example, using a grappling hook towards an enemy not only whiplashes you towards them, but also attacks them. Also, later when you get the wingsuit, you can upgrade it so you can attack in a windmill motion, which can not only be used as an attack, but also can be used on items and even projectiles coming from enemies to keep you airborne for a moment. This requires timing and accuracy. All of these things given to the player are very important. In many ways, this game asks you to grasp and understand these mechanics because a lot of puzzles, not to mention boss battles with multiple sequences, will require you to think outside the box and utilize your knowledge of what is given to you. Facing off against bosses and knowing when to dodge and attack is very vital. On top of that, the player has to keep their eyes peeled for an opportunity and stay moving. Speaking of upgrades, the player collects these things called time shards that is found either floating around the environment in an emphasizing way, or is dropped when destroying an opponent. If you take these things to the shopkeeper that is usually found in checkpoints and before boss battles, you can obtain more upgrades in your health, defenses, and attacks when you gather enough for the price tag. Now this game does have a difficulty curve that you must master, and you will die a lot. Without mechanics of leveling up and getting stronger weapons, the messenger focuses on the player getting better at this game. So it isn't that things are getting harder, you're just getting good. But on your path to getting good, you will be penalized a little for your failures though, just to add a little more incentive to get, better I guess. It is here that this character by the name of Quabro is introduced. This interesting looking character took me a while to realize it was a demon with one eye and horns, rather than a crab with two eyes looking in one direction flying. This little demon grants you immortality, but at a cost though. You see, when you die, he shows up to restart the player at a checkpoint, and because he does this favor for you, he begins to treat the messenger like student loans. The messenger will then have to constantly pay this demon within currency, that is time shards, until he is satisfied and not allowing the player to forget the consequences of making one bad decision. In other words, the time shards that you usually collect will go straight to him. Luckily, he doesn't take that much of which you can easily get back over time, and there is even an upgrade that would allow him to take less shards away if you just so happen to fall into a short-term debt due to a stupid death. But if you keep dying though, Quabro will begin to crack jokes at you due to your performance, which is kind of funny and irritating. He is always there when you die, but when it comes to boss battles, he looks for the nearest exit, as if to say you're on your own, kid. The other abilities you get while playing this game is the Naruto Jesus run, swimming, and of course the last mechanic that adds another layer to the gameplay, which is, if you haven't seen it in trailers, the time rifts. Oh, I can't forget that there's one last thing that you can collect while playing this game, and those are these green medallions. If you collect all of them, you'll get this item that will help you out, but for me personally, Overall, the gameplay is very well thought out. Using the abilities and tools efficiently will betterly prepare the player for what may come. This game does an excellent job in giving the player time to master the bits and pieces of its mechanics, because to be quite honest, the first half of the game is just that. The second half is when the training wheels come off. Now, one of the things I have to give a standing ovation to is the writing. This game pokes fun at a whole lot of gaming tropes and often breaks the fourth wall. Actually, one of the main examples of who will be guilty of this is this hooded figure here. He messes with the player, let alone the messenger, all the time. When I played this game, I quickly began to notice a certain pattern in which I will always find a door and two candles right before every boss fight. So when I got here to stop for some information on the upcoming boss battle, he straight up asked the messenger, does anybody go to work on that day off? In other words, it was a means of telling me that there isn't going to be any boss battle to worry about up ahead. And the funny thing is, he was actually right. Then there was this other time when I saw this huge monster and started attacking it because, well, it was obviously a boss battle. To my surprise, come to find out, this boss actually is sensitive and has feelings. My bad for being presumptuous, right? I know the old terminology of don't judge a book by its cover, but honestly, how many times have you played the game and thought about the monster in the video game having feelings? It's just I saw it and killed it on impulse. Its existence kind of offended me. Do gamers really think about things like that, or even consider the possibility that you could be doing these things? Obviously no. You see a boss, it's a game, kill it. Sounds very desensitive, doesn't it? But it's sentiments like that that actually makes this game kind of stand out amongst other games that I played, as far as dialogue goes. And the last thing I gotta give this game some credit is how over time this game evolves into something more than what the player initially may thought this game was. They do this in such a genius way that, if you think about it now, it's actually comedic. Some of the twists was actually spoiled due to the trailers, but that was just the first layer of an onion being peeled back. You still have to get through more layers to get to the core of what this game is. This game is a masterpiece, which is why I'm giving this game a 10 out of 10. The thoughtfulness and imaginative level design, characters, the challenges, and how this game gives multiple ways of maneuvering through this world is pure genius. I can tell a whole lot of love, time, thought, and passion was actually put into creating The Messenger, so go ahead and do the thing and pick it up. The Messenger is now available for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Steam, Xbox One, GOG, and Epic Games. Shortly after, a free DLC expansion was released called Picnic Panic that sees the cast of characters taking things to the beach with new boss battles, levels of course, and an overall tropical atmosphere. Oh, and did I forget to mention that this expansion was free? During the time of this review, Sabotage Studios has been giving people a little bit of a taste of their newer up-and-coming game called Sea of Stars. From the looks of it, it's an action RPG that reminds me of the old classics like Secret of Mana or even Chrono Cross. It looks like you take control of two protagonists that both have the power to do that MGS5 thing and control day and night at will. Sea of Stars actually takes place in the same universe as The Messenger, and to be perfectly honest, I believe the developers always had this game in mind when working on The Messenger. Why I say this? Well, it's because, give me a sec. Hold on, spoilers. I'm gonna give you some time to skip ahead if you don't want to know. You still here? Alright, here we go. So there's a part in the game where you come across this temple and you'll have to have these two items that look identical to the same emblems that you will see on the Sea of Stars trailer. Actually, the Messenger meets the two people you play as from Sea of Stars. Well, not physically of course, because they've been dead for quite some time. Apparently in the Sea of Stars, we're going to find out about their story, and of course how the world was before, this game happened. So far, the game has reached their mark within their funding via Kickstarter, and expected to come out in year 2021, I believe. And quite honestly, I can't wait for it. I personally love games that share the same universe where each of the games have their own identities and ways that present their story to reinforce the world building. It's kind of like having different shape of puzzle pieces and putting them together just to see the bigger picture. But anyway, that's just me. Be safe out there, and peace y'all.
And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit up that notification bell, and I gotta go.